So this hand you see right on my pattern paper is the same person I'll be making these hand gloves for. So my advice is, whoever you're making hand gloves for, please trace out the person's hand on preferably a paper. But if that person is not available for this, then use someone that is about same size with the person. It is easier, it is better to get a well-fitted hand glove. You can see the way I place the hand on the paper with the fingers widely spread out. That's the same way you're going to do yours. If you do not spread out the fingers like you can see right here, you know you're going to be cutting on your fabric. When you cut on fabric, you would not be able to move your fingers properly. So when you do this, please spread out your fingers before tracing. So I'm done with tracing out this hand. I'm just going to extend the line upwards a little just to make it a bit longer. Hi guys, you're welcome back to Valmich Fit. Here we'll learn tips, tricks and techniques of making beautiful and of course amazing outfits. Today I'm going to be teaching you guys how to cut a beautiful and stylish hand glove. It's going to be a long hand glove. This is the fabric I'll be using for it. This fabric is called chantilly lace. There are different types and grades of chantilly lace, but this is the one I'm using for it. If you're making your hand glove, you need just half yard of fabric to make it, but make sure whatever fabric you're using for it should be a stretchy fabric. So if you'd love to learn how to do this, let's go straight into cutting. So guys, the first thing you need here is a pattern paper. So I have my pattern paper set and I'm going to be tracing on this pattern paper. So this hand you see right on my pattern paper is the same person I'll be making these hand gloves for. So my advice is, whoever you're making hand gloves for, please trace out the person's hand on preferably a paper. But if that person is not available for this, then use someone that is about same size with the person. It is easier, it is better to get a well-fitted hand glove. You can see the way I place the hand on the paper with the fingers widely spread out. That's the same way you're going to do yours. If you do not spread out the fingers like you can see right here, you know you're going to be cutting on your fabric. When you cut on fabric, you would not be able to move your fingers properly. So when you do this, please spread out your fingers before tracing. So I'm done with tracing out this hand. I'm just going to extend the line upwards a little just to make it a bit longer. So I'm going to stop here and show you guys what I traced out before. So you can see the difference between the two traced out hands. One is straight and one is bent, but I am going to make use of the one that is straight because the bent one, if you cut on fabric like that, it's going to come out bent on your fabric. So make sure your hand is placed straight on your paper before tracing out. You can decide to make yours even longer than this, or you can make it short. So what I'm going to do next is to cut out this paper, but I'm going to be adding ½ inch round this traced hand for my seam allowance. Yes, so I'm just going to add just ½ inch round on every part of this traced hand. Like I said earlier, you can make yours longer, even longer than you see right here, or you can make it short. You can make it just as short as up to the wrist. If you do not add your seam allowance either on your paper or on your main fabric, it's going to be difficult for you when putting on your hand gloves, because you know the palm area is sort of wide, and that is even more reason why you should use a stretchy fabric to make your hand glove. You can use a stretchy net fabric or lycra fabric. You can use velvet fabric to make your hand gloves, and so many other stretchy fabrics out there. This stretchy fabric is if you want your hand gloves to be very fitted to your hand. But if you do not want it to be that way, you can actually use non-stretchy fabric to make your hand gloves, but you would have to make it wider. It will not be fitted to your hand like I'm doing right here, because it is non-stretchy and putting it on will be difficult if you make it fitted like I am doing for this one. So that's the more reason I talked about using a stretchy fabric if you want it to be fitted to your hand. So you can see how I'm tracing out every of the fingers on this traced paper, and I'm making sure to add my ½ inch seam allowance for my sewing. I decided to add it on my paper so it will be easy for me when cutting on my fabric. So I'm just cutting off the excess from this to have a very nice shape for the fingers. So this is what I have after cutting out the traced pattern. You can see the ½ inch I added. You can just add 1/4 inch, especially for the fingers area. You can do 1/4 inch, but be sure you sew with the exact seam allowance added. Now I'm going to cut on my fabric, and like I said earlier, I'm using ½ yard to make these hand gloves. If you look very well, you see this fabric is different from the first one I displayed earlier. So I decided to use that first one for something else, and then I'll be using this to cut the hand gloves. One mistake you would want to avoid for making your hand gloves if you are using a stretchy fabric, you know some fabrics stretch at one side and at the other side they do not stretch. So one mistake you want to avoid, which I made on this very one, was placing my pattern paper, my traced out hand, on the side that do not stretch sideways. So you see the way I'm placing this traced out hand on my main fabric. Sideways it doesn't stretch, which is one mistake you do not want to make, while it stretches up and down, which is from the fingers to the top arm. And for this very reason, I had to change the fabric for the second time. But for now, let me show you what I did to make this. So you can see me pinning down my traced paper on the main fabric. I am going to pin down every part of this paper on the fabric, so it will be very easy for me when cutting out my fabric. So you can see a line I made across on one of the fingers. Yes, because I'm going to make this later on an open glove. So I'm going to make the gloves open on the fingers area. So now I'm going to cut out my fabric, tracing it exactly as it is on the paper. So every part that I need to pin down on my fabric, I'll make sure to pin so that it will be very easy when cutting out my fabric from the paper. On this part where you have the fingers, please make sure the paper is well pinned down on the fabric so it doesn't shift or move away from the right position. If not, you're going to cut out your fabric wrongly and you're not going to get a very good fit for your hand gloves. You will not be able to move your fingers properly like I said earlier. So please make sure to pin it down properly before cutting out your fabric. So you can see how I'm cutting out on each of these fingers. First, I'm just going to cut the fabric out on the fingers like so, and then I'm going to deepen into the fingers later after I have traced out on my fabric. Though you can go ahead to deepen into the fingers right now as it is on the paper, or you can do that after cutting this off. So now I have my traced out paper on my fabric, and I'm going to trim off a bit on the arm area. I just want to leave it at that length. I don't want it to be longer than the traced hand. For this part, there will be no need of adding any seam allowance because I would not be folding or stitching this part, this top arm. I will just leave it the way I cut my fabric, just exactly as my fabric is. I will not be folding or stitching that part of the hand gloves. So this is what I have after cutting, but you can make yours longer. Like I said earlier, you can decide to fold yours on that area, but I want it to look that simple and plain on that part. So now this is how it looks like on the other side. See how the fabric looks like. The reason I said I am going to cut deep into the fingers, because definitely our fingers are not that short, so you'll be stitching ½ inch round on every part of this. So after that, please, before you stitch, please cut in into the fingers area. What I mean here is cutting in as deep as you have on your traced paper. So for this part, like I said, I will not be folding. I'm going to leave it that plain like that. So for the fingers, please, please, please do not forget that. If not, you would not be able to move your fingers properly. You can see my hand on the traced out fabric. That is where it's going to reach up to. You can see that. So you see how accurate it is as I placed my hand on the traced out fabric. But mind you, this glove is not my size. It is not for me and it is not my size. That is why it has less seam allowance from the wrist upwards. So I am done with cutting out one hand. I'll place the other fabric to cut out the other hand, because we are cutting out two gloves. So I'm going to place the other fabric like so, like I did for the first. Then I'm just going to trim off this excess from this part just to make it straight, and then place my other fabric on this one. So this is my traced out fabric, which is the first hand. I'm going to use it to cut out the second hand. And also please make sure to pin down your traced out fabric on your other fabric, so it will be easy for you when cutting this out. So like I said earlier about making these gloves open fingers, that is, my glove is not going to be as long as I have traced on my paper, but I decided to cut it out full like this. So after stitching the pieces together, making my gloves, I am going to trim off a little off the fingers area on the fabric to how short I want that part to be. Though you can leave yours like this complete, or you can decide to trim off from the fingers area on the fabric on how short or how long you want that part to be. You can decide to create it however style you want for your gloves, but this is how I'm going to make mine, because this is what my client requested for hers. Please guys, if you are on my channel for the first time and you are not yet subscribed to my channel, please hit on that subscribe button. And if you find this tutorial helpful, please click on the notification bell on this channel, so you'll be notified whenever I post a new video and you'll be among the first persons to watch the tutorial. So like I said earlier about cutting into my traced fabric like I have on my pattern paper, that is exactly what I am doing right here. Because when I cut out on my fabric, I just went ahead to cut out without deepening into the fingers like I have on my pattern paper. So that is just what I'm doing right here, so that when I stitch the pieces together, I'll be able to move the fingers properly and comfortably without stress. So for this cutout fabric, I have two pieces for each side of the hands, two for the left hand side, two for the right hand side, and I'm going to be stitching the two pieces together to make each of the hand gloves. At this point, to make the open fingers gloves, you can trim off a bit from your fabric right now before going to your sewing machine to stitch the pieces together. But I'm going to make these gloves just a bit after the knuckles. So that is how much I am trimming off the fabric on the fingers area. Please guys, do not forget, make sure to stitch with the exact seam allowance you put on your fabric. If you did ½ inch, please stitch with ½ inch. If you did ¼ inch, please stitch with ¼ inch, so that you will not sew your gloves to be too small. So when on your sewing machine, when sewing this fingers area, you see the way the shape is on the depth area like a V shape. But when you open your fingers wide, you know, in between your fingers, you have like a little curve when you open them wide. So that is exactly how you're going to stitch in between the fingers so that you can move your fingers freely. So guys, I really hope you understand my explanations here, since I do not have a sewing video tutorial, but this is the finished look after I stitched together. So like I said earlier, that I made use of another fabric for my hand gloves because of the experience I had with the other fabric. So this is how it looks like, and I hope you like the outcome of it, because I do too. So if you go ahead to follow the instructions on this tutorial, this will be your beautiful outcome. So guys, we have come to the end of this interesting tutorial, and if you find it helpful, please hit on that subscribe button if you're not yet subscribed to my channel, and also turn on your notification bell to be notified whenever I post new tutorial videos. Please give this video a thumbs up, click on that like button if you like this tutorial and you're going to be trying this out. For now, I'll see you guys in my next tutorial. Bye.